Below that, what does it say?
Anchor, bring in Arkansas GOP Senator Tom Cotton. So it's 2 minutes after the top there. Let's bring in Republican from the great state of Arkansas, Tom Cotton.
Senator, have you ever been to Daytona?
I have not, unfortunately. I need to get down there and see the race one day.
Me too. I'm reading this morning. That's the Stetson Mansion is there. The guy who gave us the hat.
Oh, look at that.
Right.
Just a little fun fact.
Yeah.
Right.
Just a little fun fact to take to the water cooler today.
Right.
Hey, Senator, from the get-go, you questioned whether or not COVID could have originated at that lab. You were roundly mocked. A lot of Republicans joined you. They were mocked. You know, the social media companies shut it down. Yesterday, Jake Sullivan, who's the president's national security advisor, was talking over on one of the other channels about how we will get to the origins. And it's not very optimistic about how the government is going to leverage the assets of the federal government to get China to give us the truth. Here's Jake Sullivan. Listen to this.
What Joe Biden did in Europe this week was rally the democratic world to speak with a common voice on this issue. For the first time since COVID broke out, President Trump wasn't able to do it, President Biden was. And it is that diplomatic spade work, rallying the nations of the world, imposing political and diplomatic pressure on China, that is a core part of the effort we are undertaking to ultimately face China with a stark choice. Either they will allow, in a responsible way, investigators in to do the real work of figuring out where this came from, or they will face isolation in the international community.
How terrified is China right now, Senator? Because if they don't cough up the information, we will isolate them internationally.
Yeah, I don't think Xi Jinping is quaking in his boots that Joe Biden's not going to invite him to coffee at the next G20. Look, it's not surprising that this crew doesn't traffic in threats with our enemies. The only people they seem to threaten are allies like Israel. But nor should it require China's cooperation. First off, China is not going to cooperate. They're not going to open those labs and let American scientists and researchers go in. And second, there's more than enough evidence to hold China accountable now. As you said, from the very beginning, I noted that this virus very well could have originated in those labs. I mean, it didn't come from a remote mountain village next to a cave full of bats. It came from a city larger than New York, just a few blocks down the street from the lab where they research these viruses, a lab that's run by a woman literally nicknamed the Bat Lady. It's well past time the Biden administration began imposing consequences on China, like pulling their most favored nation trading status, or pulling all the visas that Chinese Communist Party officials and their kids get to come to this country every year. We can do a lot to hold China accountable, and we're not doing nearly enough.
Stop giving money for gain-of-function research to countries like that. How vindicated did you feel when the left started talking about the lab leak theory, and you could finally write about it on social media without being blocked?
Well, Ainsley, I got to say, I wish I'd been wrong from the very beginning about this virus and all of its effects around the world and here at home. I wish I'd looked back and been called an alarmist, but I wasn't, unfortunately. And I think it's a reminder that we shouldn't allow companies like Facebook and Twitter to control the terms of our discourse. We might have gotten to the truth a lot faster if we had had an open, honest discussion and not censorship from big tech companies.
So I want you to hear what Dr. Fauci said yesterday, the second time he's really responding to criticism after walking on water for the first 13 months of this virus. Not here, but other places. Listen.
It is essential as a scientist that you evolve your opinion and your recommendations based on the data as it evolves. And that's the reason why I say people who then criticize me about that are actually criticizing science.
Here we go again. Why don't you take this from here?
Yeah, Tony Fauci is not acting as a scientist or a doctor anymore. He's acting as a Democratic Party activist in a white lab coat. Why doesn't he tell us what science, what data backs up the Biden administration's stupid mask mandate for airports and airplanes? I mean, are you more likely to get the coronavirus in an airport than you are a shopping mall or an airplane? With its massive filtration systems, is it really necessary to kick off a family with an autistic child who can't wear a mask peacefully for an entire airplane? Does Dr. Fauci have evidence to support that from the data and the science? I mean, we shouldn't allow Tony Fauci and Facebook to determine what we can and cannot say about this virus, because from the beginning, he's been giving politicized advice. He's admitted that he's changed his advice based on or what would be herd immunity levels, not based on what he thinks he sees in the data, but what he thinks the American people are ready to hear.
Senator,
why doesn't he just tell us what the facts are?
He does have power, and he has international standing. Can you imagine if he used that power to say, I don't know what this virus is. China is not giving me answers. I can't prepare the CDC or recommend them for a test that's going to hit our shores. I don't know about the mutation because they're not being transparent. With all that pressure, that would have helped solve the problem. That would have humanized him more. I'm an elite virologist. I have this international standing, and I am not getting answers. That would have helped. Instead, he subtly took his points, his talking points from the left, and took most of his stature to go at Trump.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. In fact, he seemed from the very beginning to be more concerned about protecting his own agency's reputation and his reputation and his friends in the science world around the world, to include the scientist in this very lab in Wuhan, which his agency indirectly funded with hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars. So he was more concerned with CYA than he was about being open and honest about what China was up to and what we didn't know because of China's deceitfulness.
And when you look back now, given the arc of data that's come in and things like that, there was a study that came out that said that hydroxychloroquine actually helped people survive. And of course, that was one of the things that Donald Trump came out and said, I've heard good things about it. Next thing you know, Fauci, who's standing right over there, blows him up. And the left wing applauds. And then the same thing with the lab leak. And the mainstream media applauds as well. When you look at how many times, to your point, that essentially he's a politician in a lab coat, when you look at the number of times he just flew in the face of whatever Donald Trump was saying at the time, ultimately, there are a number of Democratic strategists who thought at the time, you know, if we can show that Donald Trump has not done a good job trying to get us out of that pandemic, he could lose the election. Certainly, Tony Fauci did not help him.
Yeah, well, from the very beginning, the Democrats saw this coronavirus pandemic as a way to defeat the former president in the election last year. And basically anything that he said or that I said or that some other Republican said was immediately rejected by the quote-unquote science,
right,
even though there wasn't a scientific basis for it, even though there was not evidence against it. And some of it has been proven correct in retrospect. Again, it just goes to show that Tony Fauci, almost from the beginning, has been acting more as a Democratic Party activist in a white lab coat, not as a neutral and objective public health expert.
Is anyone questioning why he's the leader and giving us advice when his agency was giving money for gain-of-function research to this exact lab? Why is he in charge? Isn't that a conflict of interest?
Yeah, he shouldn't be, Ainsley. There's a lot of answers that he hasn't yet given. The people who have been asking that question are Republicans in Congress. If it wasn't for the oversight we've conducted,
right,
I don't think it would have come to light that his agency has funded this lab. This lab was doing dangerous gain-of-function research to make this virus or these viruses more contagious, stuff that even Barack Obama said they shouldn't have been doing.
Absolutely, in 2014. So, Senator, this is going to be a big week for the Senate. You got H.R. 1. And you got to be voting on an infrastructure and see if there's any bipartisanship there and see if there's going to be another one of $4.2 trillion to follow if you guys do pass a $1 trillion. But let's talk about H.R. 1. Here's Senator Bernie Sanders. He said that if you don't pass this, you're allowing the Republicans, state by state, with their legislatures, to take away the right to vote. Listen.
What we are trying to do is preserve democracy. Mm-hmm. And what Republican legislatures and governors are doing in the most disgraceful way imaginable is to try to deny people of color, young people, poor people, the right to vote, people with disabilities. That is outrageous. And I really, we can disagree on all kinds of issues, but taking away the right of people to participate in American democracy is unacceptable, and the Congress must address that in any and every way.
I mean, that's the really idiotic argument that he's making. H.R. 1 nationalizes elections. But Joe Manchin is offering a memo of a halfway point. Make Election Day a holiday, require all states to give absentee ballots, end partisanship gerrymandering, require voter ID. You saw the memo. You saw the HR 1. Where do you stand?
Yeah, the Republicans don't have a plan to nationalize our elections, Brian, because we don't think we should nationalize our elections. We trust our states and their counties and cities to run our elections, and they've done a pretty good job of it for over 200 years. But that Bernie Sanders line, I mean, I just got to say, it's rich for a guy who honeymooned in the Soviet Union to be criticizing Republican governors and legislatures for undermining democracy. I mean, he said in an op-ed over the weekend that Republicans like me are trying to start a new Cold War with China. I guess he's still smarting from his loss in the first Cold War with Russia. But this bill, just to give you one example of how bad it is, would actually take your tax dollars and send them to Bernie Sanders and any other politician running for office to run their campaign. So think about that. Arkansans would be subsidizing Bernie Sanders' campaigns. I don't think many Americans want to see their tax dollars to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars going to support politicians who they oppose, attacking politicians they support. You also mentioned gerrymandering, the process of rigging electoral districts. This bill would allow Democratic operatives in all 50 states to draw district lines just like they have in places like Maryland and Illinois. And it's all built, guys, it's all built on a fabrication that Republican governors and legislatures are somehow suppressing the vote, when in reality states like Georgia are actually passing laws that expand voting access compared to Democratic states like New York and Delaware. All these states are doing is making it easy to vote but hard to cheat, and I guess Bernie Sanders doesn't like that second part.
One other topic today, New Zealand, a weightlifter there by the name of Laurel Hubbard has been confirmed as the first transgender athlete to ever compete at the Olympic Games. Apparently going to be a live medal contender competing in the women's super heavyweight category on August the 2nd. I know you have introduced legislation that would do what regarding something like this?
Yeah, this is very foolish. I mean, unfortunately, I think all four of us are old enough to remember the 1988 Olympics when the late, great Florence Griffith Joyner, Flo-Jo, as she was known, set the world record in the 100-meter dash. It's still the world record today, 33 years later. No woman's ever run faster than Flo-Jo. You know who has? More than 70 American boys in the last high school track season. It just gives you a sense of how different the athletic standards are in men and women's competition, why we've always had men and women's competitions, from the Olympics down to our high schools. And if we accept this kind of practice at the Olympics, it won't be long before the left and maybe Facebook and Twitter and Tony Fauci are demanding that the science says we have to allow boys to compete in girls' sports. That's why it's foolish for it to happen in the Olympics, and we have to protect girls' sports in America against it.
Where are the women? Where are the women saying, don't ruin this? Where's the Me Too movement on this?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it wouldn't surprise me if more female athletes speak out against it. Again, there's a reason why we've always had men and women's Olympic sports and men and women's sports down to the grade school level.
There is a Belgian weightlifter who is speaking out about it, saying it's not fair. But New Zealand says they want to be caring and understanding of everyone. Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Thank you all.
You're welcome. Have a good day. Good luck this week.